This is the first episode of our brand new Communal Property Essentials series, and in this episode I'm going to discuss what is communal property, who's entitled to use it, who's responsible to maintain it, and what the legal set of rules are that govern how it should be treated. So, what is communal property? Now, while you might think that this is actually an obvious question to answer, it's actually surprisingly common to find that owners, management companies, developers, and even committees are not aware of what communal property really is, and who's really in charge of it. What I call communal property is sometimes known as jointly owned property or the common areas of an apartment building. When you purchase an apartment, there will be some parts of your building which are shared by other property owners. This could be as simple as a car park or corridor, or as complex, if you excuse the pun, as a large resort with lots of added facilities. But effectively, any part of the building which is shared by multiple unit owners is considered communal property. This will include your building's roof, its lifts, the corridors, the swimming pool, and pretty much any space that's intended to serve all or some of the unit owners. Now, there's no difference on villas on a development if you have a shared facility like a private road, a sewage treatment plant or street lighting and so on. If these are part of the development and they're shared by multiple unit owners, it's considered communal property. Now, these parts of your building are not just shared by you and your fellow unit owners, you actually own them. To break this down, let's say your building has 10 apartments. And to make this example a little bit easier on me, let's also say that they're all the same size and the same value. Now, the reason for this is quite important, but I'm going to cover this in another video. So in this scenario, in addition to owning your apartment, you would actually own 10% of the communal property. So you own 10% of every tile, every light switch, elevator, and so on. Now, it doesn't mean that you can go cutting your 10% off and taking it home with you, but it does mean that if a light switch in the corridor needs replacing, you're responsible for 10% of the cost of that replacement. It doesn't matter if the switch is on the 5th floor and your apartment's on the ground. As you own your share of that light switch, you're responsible for your share of its replacement. The same goes for any other expenses for the maintenance and operation of these areas. So the electricity bill for the lights, the pool, the lift and so on, you would be responsible for your 10% of. If you have a cleaner that comes to clean the communal areas once per week, you got it, you're responsible for 10% of that cost as well. It's also important to note that it doesn't matter if, as a property owner, you don't use that facility. I hear this all the time on developments that I manage when owners argue that they don't want to pay for the swimming pool maintenance as they don't use their apartments throughout the year or at all. But all owners of communal property need to pay their share of all the communal expenses. They own it, so they have to pay for it. It's as simple as that, whether they use it or not. If your building has more than 5 units, then they're controlled by a dedicated section of the Immovable Property Law, which is called Section 38, Buildings Under Joint Ownership. If you like, you can get a copy of this section of the law on my website, and the link will be in the video description below. This law sets out the rules on how communal ownership share is calculated, how the building should be managed and operated. Now, it's not the most riveting of documents, but it is an important read. And if you have a copy of my book, The Ultimate Committee Handbook, you'll see that I actually try and break these regulations down and show you how they should be applied in the real world. And if you don't have a copy of this book yet, don't worry, there's also a link in the description below for that. Okay, so now we've covered what is communal property, we need to talk about who's in charge of it. Using the same example above, every time a light switch needs replacing, we cannot have a meeting to discuss how to replace it. Even on small buildings, this would become a complete and utter nightmare, especially with so many unit owners in Cyprus not actually living in the properties that they own. So those regulations that I mentioned earlier actually solve this problem by having a small group of unit owners elected once a year to make all these decisions and effectively run the committee. They are called the Management Committee, and the role of the Management Committee is a much larger subject and is going to be the topic of episode 2 in the Communal Property Essentials series, so make sure to subscribe. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, you can click on the subscribe button below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon to make sure that you're notified when new videos are released. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. I do check these and will answer them. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.